You understand? The mazal, the spiritual source of Haman. I'll tell you just a story parenthetically, since I'm mentioning Haman. There was a very famous tzaddik who passed away in 1957. His name was Reb Aaron Rekeach, the Belzer Rebbe. He was a very, very holy man. He was a godly man, mamish, a holy man. He was the Rebbe of Belzer Hasidim. He became the Rebbe in 1927. Hitler came to power at the beginning of 1933. As soon as Hitler came to power, the Belzer Rebbe identified him. And he used to call him, but what later on Churchill called him, that evil man, Oisei Rusha, that bad man. And he used to say, that bad man doesn't let me daven. From 1933, that bad man doesn't let me learn, that bad man doesn't let me... The Belzer Rebbe, he was a very sensitive neshama. So in 1939, in the month of Adar, you have the yahrzeit of Reb Melech Milezhensk, one of the great Hasidic Rebbes of Poland. The Rebbe Reb Melech, they call him. So he sent a shliach from Rebels to Milezhensk with a message. And the message was as follows. The message was that Haman HaRasha raised himself till the Kisei HaKavod, till the heavenly throne. Esther HaMalka raised herself higher than him and threw him down. Now there is Oisei Rusha, that evil man, and no tzaddik, that means no living tzaddik, could throw him down. Why are you sleeping? That was the message. Why are you sleeping? That was the message. Why are you sleeping? So Haman was a Rasha with incredible koiches, right? Hashem created in this world good and evil. And he empowered evil. He gave evil power, and evil has to be defeated. And when Mashiach comes, evil is finished. That's what Mashiach means, right? Mashiach is not the pshat. Mashiach wins. There's no more evil, so Mashiach cannot lose, you understand? So Haman was an evil force. And the malach of Haman, maybe Haman Hagashmi, maybe Haman was a very smart guy, maybe it's possible. But it's more likely that the malach of Haman understood that Moshe Rabbeinu died. So the question, the Gemara says, V'lo Yodai, he didn't know, he didn't know that in that month Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So I'm asking you a question. If Haman was so smart that he knew history from 1,000 years before, and if it's not the physical Haman and it's the spiritual Haman, it's many times so. If the spiritual Haman knew that Adar is a bad month for the Jewish people, because I say Chodesh Meis Moshe, how come he didn't know Chodesh Neilad Moshe? How come Moshe was born? And there's a very good answer to the question. Haman knew Moshe was born in Adar. Haman knew Moshe was born in Adar. But he didn't think it mattered. Why? Because a person is not born a tzaddik, a person is born a clean slate, a person is born an open book, right? A person is born a book where all the pages are blank. You understand? You can write in whatever you want. So Haman knew Moshe was born in Adar, he just didn't think it mattered. When he passes away, and he was already a tzaddik, so his death is considered not a good thing, so Haman rejoiced, right? And why was he wrong? Why was he wrong? Because Moshe is not like a normal tzaddik. See, that's the whole word. Moshe is not like a regular tzaddik. Regular tzaddikim, when they're born, they're not yet a tzaddik. They're going to become a tzaddik. And they can also become, chas v'sham, the opposite of a tzaddik. The Gemara says, Kol ha-gadol mechavei yitzar gadol mimenu, right? The Gemara says, if you have greater potential to be a tzaddik, you can also have greater potential to be a rasha. And our history has borne that out, yes? But Moshe Rabbeinu was different. And this Haman didn't understand. And even the Mazal of Haman didn't understand. Even the Malach of Haman didn't understand. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu different? Because the Gemara says, Rashi brings it in Chumash, when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, Nismala Abayas Kula Oira. When Moshe was born, the house was filled with light. He was a baby. Because Moshe is a different kind of a neshama. Moshe is a different kind of a neshama. When Moshe's neshama came into the world, he was already a tzaddik. He was already a tzaddik. Because his neshama is different than most neshamas, because he did not come into this world like everybody else. To be individual Jews serving Hashem as individual people, Moshe is called a general soul, a neshama klalit, a general soul. So his personal life is different than everybody else's personal life because he exists for the cloud. He exists for the community, and Haman didn't get that. Haman didn't understand that there's such a thing as a tzaddik that from the moment he's born, his inyan, his purpose is a cloud, is for the community, is for everybody, you understand? And there's a lot of stories to support this idea that a Rebbe, a tzaddik, a madrega of a Rebbe, his neshama comes into the world through a different process than everybody else's. And he's given a lot of gifts, you know, the Alter Rebbe, you heard the Alter Rebbe, yeah, Reb Shnei Zalman, the Mechaber Sefer Tanya Kadisha, the Yasef Chassidus Chabad. Alter Rebbe was 20 years old, or 19 years old, when he met his Rebbe, the Mezritcher Maggid, the Dave Ber of Mezritch. And when the Alter Rebbe met him, the Alter Rebbe had complaints. What were his complaints? He had two big tainas. His first complaint was, I never had a teacher. He was 19 and a half years old. He knew the whole Torah. And all the Goyish Chochmas, all the secular knowledge that was known then, it's the middle of the 18th century, he knew that also. And he said to the Mezritcher Maggid, I never had a teacher. I never had a Rav. I'm all self-taught. I never had a teacher. And he felt that if you don't have a teacher, you can't properly serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the second taina was, he was 19 and a half years old, and he told the Mezritcher Maggid that never in my life did I work hard on anything. Never in my life did I work hard on anything. Everything was easy. And the Gemara says, it's one of the 12 psukim, yeah? Lo yogai to umatzasa al ta'amin. If a person has it easy, then he hasn't achieved. So the Alter Rebbe came to his Rebbe, to the Maggid, and said, Rebbe, I never had a teacher, and I never worked hard. So the Mezritcher Maggid made him feel good. He told him, don't worry, your life is going to be very, very hard. And you're going to suffer a lot. You'll have a lot of hardships. And then he told him these words, Torah is dir gegeben geworden b'matana. Torah was given to you as a free gift. It's easy. A lot of things are easy for you. But these things are easy for you because of the things that you're going to have to do later that are going to be far more difficult. You understand? That's the pshat. The Rebbe, when the Rebbe first became Rebbe, there's a famous Fabrengen where the Rebbe was standing and holding a Gemara. The Gemara is very big. So somebody wanted to help the Rebbe hold the Gemara. So the Rebbe said to him in Yiddish, a Rebbe is Teire nit schwer. For a Rebbe, Torah is not heavy. It's a matana. Why? Because he has other problems. What are his problems? Problems are us. So this is the foundational idea, you understand? The foundational idea is that Goyishkeit, Klippa, not even Haman, understands what it means that the Eibishter brings into this world a tzaddik whose purpose it is to serve us, to serve the Jewish people. He's called a neshama klolis, a general soul. And they have a whole different mission, a whole different purpose, a whole different life, and a whole different responsibility. And they have a whole different koiches, right? There was a Yid who lived in Crown Heights many, many years ago who used to say there's different kinds of hidden tzaddikim, right? Tzaddik nista, hidden tzaddikim, yeah? One tzaddik nista is a hidden tzaddik because he's a shoemaker, another tzaddik nista is he's a tailor, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a hidden tzaddik, and his cover is that he's a Rebbe. That's the front, that's the masach, that's the mask. What's behind, nobody knows. This is the idea of a Rebbe, of an neshama klolis. And we get together on Yud Aleph Nissan, and we live with this inyan, with this iskashrus, with this connection. There was a great Gaon in Europe. He died in 1936. The Rogatchover Gaon. He's a very famous Gaon. He was a genius, he was a scholar, he was a Talmudist, he was a rabbi. And he was very close to the Chabad Rebbeim. So when the Bachram used to visit Leningrad, when they come visit the previous Rebbe, so they always made it their business to go into the Rogatchover. He was older than the Frierdiker Rebbe by more than 20 years. So when they came in to see him, this great genius asked them if they understand what is a Rebbe. The Rogatchover Gaon asked them, you know what a Rebbe means? So they said that they didn't. Even though they thought that they did, but they knew that the right answer is that they didn't. So the Rogatchover told them that a Rebbe is a Yid before Krishma at night. Before he says Krishma Shalamita, he scans the globe. He scans the globe, the globus, to see if there's any place a Yid who needs help. And he does what he can to help. So this is the idea. This is the concept. And what's funny about it? He's a person. He has 2 eyes, he has 2 nostrils, he has 2 ears, he has a mouth, he has 2 hands, 10 fingers. But he looks exactly like everybody else. He's not bigger, he's not taller, he's not, yeah. There was a Yid in Crown Heights who was a big chassid. His name was Moshe Dubinsky. So he wanted to make for the Rebbe a omid. You know what an omid is? To hold a siddur, a lectern. So he went to a carpenter to make for the Rebbe a stender. So the carpenter asked Rabbi Dubinsky, how big is your rabbi? He says, how big is my rabbi? He's the biggest rabbi in the world. So he came back a week later and the stender was 6.5 feet tall. He says, it's over his head. He said, you told me he's the biggest rabbi in the world. Verstehst. So what's the so to speak, what's the more meaningful component of this? The more meaningful component of this is the individual kesher that the Rebbe has with each person. He's a big Rebbe. He's a very big Rebbe. And a lot of you probably never met him, right? I mean, you've seen the Rebbe. You've seen the Rebbe. You know, you look like a young man. Yeah. You've seen the Rebbe. Euchat nicht. Rabbi Shochet, you've seen the Rebbe.
I was born in Gimel.
Oh, you're Beryl's mafchavruse.
Yes.
Beryl's class.
Yes.
It's crazy. The Rebbe had a personal connection to each person. It wasn't cosmos. It wasn't big. You understand? He got up on the stage. If you've watched the Lag BaOmer parades, you watch Lag BaOmer parades, how the children march by and the Rebbe stands and he's holding his right hand with his left hand and he's waving to them. The Rebbe knew each one of us as individuals, and he knows each one of us individuals. And he looked into your eyes. And when he looked into your eyes, it was a conversation. If you're my father's age, older than I am, you actually went into Yechidus. You had a private meeting. You went into the Rebbe and you talked about personal things. My generation, I'm too young for that. Even my father's older than I am, but even his father was on the cusp of no more Yechidus. So the Rebbe talked to us with his eyes. A room full of people looked at you, and there was a conversation. You understood it, he understood it, nobody else knew. You understand? And it was done so tzanua. It looks like the Rebbe. You look at the movies. If you watch it, the Rebbe's doing this. Every one of those contacts is a bond. It's impossible to explain. It's impossible to understand. In other words, the Rebbe wasn't the Rebbe because he was a big person with a lot of followers. That also. The Rebbe was the Rebbe because every yochid, every person had a different cheshbon. A Jew came from Israel. His first visit to the Rebbe, he'd never seen the Rebbe before. And he sits at Fabrengens, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people, and he's watching this. You know, the Rebbe would stare at you, and then look away and ignore you, stare at you, and then look back. If you paid attention, he wasn't just looking around the room saying to people hello. There was something happening. There was a conversation. Sometimes he looked at you and he didn't answer you, looked away. Sometimes he looked back. It was a whole meeting. And the only way to explain it to about a neshama and a neshama, you understand? The human mind is not big enough to appreciate how big this is. And the human mind is not big enough to appreciate how intimate it is, how personal it is. Meaning it's two sides. One side of this connection is very big, very, very big, as big as the world. And the other side of this connection is very, very personal. It's individual. Now, I'm older than you. I don't know if I'm older than you. I don't know. I'm pretty old. I'm pretty old, Chachat. If you never saw the Rebbe, I'm pretty old. So I don't know. My beard makes me look older than you. Your shtickelbud makes you look a little. I don't know how old you are. I don't need to know. But the point is, you came here, right? You didn't come here. You didn't come to 770 for Aleph Nissan because it's a tourist attraction. There are nicer places to visit than 770 with the beams in the middle, with the poles. You came here because you have a connection to the Rebbe. It's different than mine. It's certainly different than my father's. But it's individual. It's individual. It's very personal. I always tell my students, I always tell my Talmidim, that whenever you write a letter to the Rebbe, you should keep a copy. However frequently you write letters to the Rebbe, you should keep a copy. and look back at the letters 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, and you see a number of things. First of all, it's the most honest record of your life. You'll never be more honest than you with the Rebbe. And second of all, you see how the things you ask for you get. It just takes time. It happens without you seeing how. You go to the Rebbe, you ask for all kinds of things, and you forget about it. If you go back and look at your letters from 2 years ago, from 3 years ago, you see that it's serious. It's very, very real. And I would believe this is why you're here. I would believe this is why you came. You came not just because he told you that this is a good place to visit in the middle of April, but because you feel this connection, you feel this iskashus, you feel this bond. And it's very personal. It's very, very personal. It's very individual. And the bond has different aspects, you know. The simplest reason people come to the Rebbe is because they have problems. Yeah, if I have too much of a mortgage and I'm not making enough money, or if I overinvested and then the market fell, or the rates of interest rose, or the banks are not giving loans and I need money, so I'm running, I need help. Or some chassid's not well, you come running. People come to the Rebbe because they have needs. Things that concern them, that consume them, that bother them, that they cannot fix, so they come to the Rebbe. And that works too. That works also. But that's not why the Eibishter created a Rebbe. You understand? Hashem didn't create a Rebbe to solve our problems. The Eibishter created a Rebbe to connect us to the Eibishter. The role of a tzaddik, the job of a Rebbe, of a tzaddik, is to connect us with God. There's a Rav, right? A rabbi. What does a Rav do? He paskins shaylas. You have a question, you go to a Rav, he tells you it's kosher, it's not kosher, it's okay, it's not okay, right? Then there's a Rosh Yeshiva. Rosh Yeshiva teaches you Talmudic theory. Not what the law is, but where the law came from. How the law evolved from the Chumash to the Mishnah and the Braise to the Gemara and so on and so forth. You study the evolution of the halacha, and to understand the mind, to understand what the Tanoim and Amoraim were thinking. What they were thinking when they paskin the way they paskin. What does a Rebbe do? What's his job? He doesn't paskin shaylas. He doesn't give a shiyut. What does he do? He connects Yidden to God. That's his job. He connects Yidden to the Eibishter. A Rebbe is called Saro Elikim. He connects Yidden to the Eibishter. Or to say it in different words, he connects the Jewish people to his own soul. Everyone has a neshama. That's what a Rebbe does. He lights the neshama of each person. There was a Jew who knew the Rebbe well. But Yehuda Avner was a very important man in Israel. He worked for a number of prime ministers. He was a frum Jew, he was an Orthodox Jew. And he met the Rebbe many times. And he had a conversation with the Rebbe about what a Rebbe is, what the Rebbe is. And the Rebbe told him that if you open up a closet and you find a candle, and the candle is a lump of wax with a string coming out of it. So the Rebbe said a lump of wax with a string coming out of it is not a candle, it's a lump of wax with a string. If you strike a match and you light the candle, then you have a neir, then you have a candle. So Mr. Avner said to the Rebbe, Ha'im hidlakta et haner shali. Did you light my candle? So the Rebbe said to him, Natati lecha tagafrur. I gave you the match. But your candle you have to light by yourself. This is what a tzaddik is. This is why you come to why you come to the oil. You really come here because you want a connection with Atzmus and Hus. You want a connection with God. You can learn about Judaism, right? But the beginning of Judaism is God. If you want a relationship with Hashem, you're not going to get that in the Gemara. You get that from the Rebbe, from a tzaddik. A Jew who's connected to Hashem, who connects us to Hashem accordingly. The Rebbe once in Yechida sat with an engineer, an electrical engineer. The Rebbe, from his background, is an electrical engineer. The Rebbe went to university in the 30s. He studied electrical engineering. But his career didn't work out so good. He chose a different profession. Became a Rebbe. So the Rebbe was once sitting with an electrical engineer. But the field had advanced a lot from the time the Rebbe was involved. And one of the big advancements was the transistor. That instead of a radio being this big thing, you have a little plate with these, in other words, the idea, everything is mini. And today, that's considered, compared to today with the computers, with the fiber optics, with all the new technologies and the new kinds of wires, that's considered macro. And now they have a micro. So the Rebbe was very curious about the transistor because it was new. It wasn't there when he was in school. So he spent a long time with this person. They explained the whole thing to him. What does it mean that you can make a radio much, much smaller? And when he finished, the Rebbe said, everybody comes here that I should teach them something. You came in, you taught me something. And then the Rebbe said, this man said to the Rebbe, why didn't you stay in it? You were a good engineer. Why? So the Rebbe said to him, I prefer to light up the light of the Jewish soul. Ani ma'adif, I prefer to light up the light, the fire of a Yiddish neshama. This is where you come here. Yid wants a connection to Hashem, he comes to the oil. Come to the oil. Sometimes it's electricity. Sometimes you come to the oil, it's wow. You change over in a minute. And sometimes it's not like that. You come to the oil, I mean, when you walk into the Dalet Amis, when you stand by the Rebbe, you feel. There's no question that when you go into the oil, you're in the mood inside that space is different. It's very peaceful. Inside the oil, it's very, very peaceful. But you don't necessarily feel how you're being transformed. It's slow. It's an inner process. It's a deeper process. But as far as the Rebbe is concerned, the greatest thing you could come to him for is not to help you make a better business deal or buy a nicer house. Or the Rebbe's business, his business, is to connect us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connect us to God. And if you come to the oil with the mindset that I want to become connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's a good trip. It's a very, very good reason. It's a very good reason to come closer to God. There's a story that happened in 1930, 90 years ago. The previous Rebbe visited Philadelphia. The Frierdiker Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose name was Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. I am named after him. He passed away in 1950. So the previous Rebbe visited Philadelphia. And he was staying in somebody's home. And they put in the local Jewish newspapers that there's a big rabbin here, a big rabbi who came from Russia. The Frierdiker Rebbe defied Stalin. He was the hero of the Jewish people at that time. And if you want to see him, you can come to this address. So there were 5 college boys, college kids. This goes back 90 years ago, who were Jewish, but they weren't observant, they were not frum. And they wanted to have fun at the expense of this rabbi. They wanted to make fun of him. So they prepared stupid questions, and the whole point was to poke. They wrote down a whole bunch of questions. And the purpose of the question, they would ask him questions just to chepizach, just to get under his skin, to mock him, right? So they come to the house, there's many people, it's a long line, outside onto the street, waiting to see him. So they get in line, and they figured they're going to wait an hour or 2 or 3, whatever it's going to take to go into the Rebbe. After standing in line a few minutes, an elderly Jew with a beard, in America in 1930 nobody had beards, approaches the 5 of them, and says, come. They skip the whole line, they go into the house, takes them upstairs to the 2nd floor and says, wait, the Rebbe's going to see you right away. And they're thinking they came to mock him. And they didn't make an announcement, they didn't tell anybody that they're coming, they came anonymously. And here they're being schlepped in front of the whole line to give them a chance to make fun of the Rebbe sooner. Within 2 or 3 minutes they were brought into the Rebbe's room. And as soon as they walked in, the Rebbe looked at them. And when the Rebbe looks at you, he looks through you like a laser, like a fire. The Rebbe's eyes have it's hard to understand what it feels. Eyes that don't take in, eyes that give, there's the force. I know, believe me, I know those eyes. The Frierdiker looked at them, looked straight through them, and he said to them, I understand that you have questions. What are your questions? They came to ask the questions in jest, and they asked their questions. The questions that they prepared. And the Rebbe answered them in earnest. He wasn't insulted by the questions. And they were so moved, by meeting the Rebbe. But then they said to the Rebbe, I don't understand. First of all, how'd you know we were here? And second of all, we were at the end of the line. So the Rebbe says, all these people came here because they have things to discuss, that's their business. You came here to discuss something with me, which is my business. So I put you to the head of the line. And the Rebbe asked them to keep Shabbos. In 1930 in America, to keep Shabbos, a young American born was almost, doesn't exist. And all 5 of them kept Shabbos. They met the Rebbe, and all 5 of them kept Shabbos for their whole life. Amazing, yeah. I'll tell you another story about that visit. I heard it from a good source. And the Friedrich Rebbe was all over America. In 1930, Friedrich Rebbe was healthy, physically healthy. See, he was as far as St. Louis. I mean, I don't know, you guys don't know America. St. Louis is the gateway to the west. Right? The Mississippi. If you divide America in half, north to south, till the Mississippi and from the Mississippi. The Rebbe Rayatz was till the Mississippi. He was in St. Louis, he was in Milwaukee, he was in Cincinnati, he was in Boston, he was in all the Chicago, he was in all the big cities where there were Jewish centers he visited. And in those days there were cities that had many Jews that they had no Jews. Wherever there were large numbers of Jews, the Rebbe visited. So he came to some city, I don't know what it was, and he announced that he wants to meet the teenagers, adolescents, teenagers, high school kids. And they brought a bunch of boys and girls, and the Rebbe spoke to them in Yiddish. Most of them did not understand Yiddish. Maybe a few of them knew a little Yiddish from the home, Mamaloshen. And someone translated what the Rebbe said to them in English. What did the Rebbe discuss with them? What did the Friedrich Rebbe talk to them about? The Friedrich Rebbe talked to them about Taras HaMishpacha. They were not even thinking about family purity. They were kids. They were high school kids. Taras HaMishpacha was not at all realistic. They were not thinking about getting married. And he spoke in Yiddish, and they didn't understand Yiddish, but they were in his presence. There was a girl, a high school girl, a 17-year-old girl, who was there. She didn't keep kosher even. But she was so taken by the Rebbe that she decided that she's going to keep Taras HaMishpacha. Maybe it was a boy, either a boy or a girl. I forgot one, either a boy or a girl who was at this event. He decided, even if he's not going to be frum, but he's going to keep in his marriage, there's going to be mikveh. So, when he started to date, years later, when he started dating, he knew that at some point he's going to have to tell the person he marries, listen here, we're going to keep Taras HaMishpacha. And in those days, in America, Taras HaMishpacha was not so simple. So he finally met the person, I think it was a she, it was a girl. So when she met the person that she was eventually going to marry, so after she was serious enough, she says, listen, there's something very important I need to tell you now. And this may put a huge dampener on our shidduch, but I have to tell it to you now because this is chayk v'lo yava. This I'm not breaking. And she tells him the story that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever number of years ago, there was a rabbi here. And he gathered together all the teenagers and he spoke about Taras HaMishpacha. She said, I'm not from a religious home, but I'm going to keep Taras HaMishpacha. I'm going to keep mikveh. So if we continue this, you have to understand that you have to agree that we're going to keep the law of Taras HaMishpacha. This is what she tells this boy. So the boy says to her, you were also there. He was also at that Fabrengen, and he also decided by himself that when he's going to get married, he's keep Taras HaMishpacha. And they met, Bashgacha Pratis, without each one realizing that the other was at the same meeting. They made the same decision. This is a koyach of a Rebbe, you understand? To connect you into the Eibishter. And then comes the third part. And the third part is the most important. And I'm going to tell you a story. In Poland, there was a famous Rebbe, a Groisher Rebbe, a big Rebbe. The Gerer Rebbe. There were 3 Gerer Rebbes in Poland, big Rebbes, very famous. The Chedush Harim, the Sfasemis, and the Marka Gerer. Ger in Poland, Chassidus Gur. Gur is a suburb of Warsaw, in Warsaw, in Poland. They had hundreds of thousands of Chassidim. Every Yom Tov, there were between 40 and 50,000 guests. 770 never had more than 10,000. But the Rebbe, 40, you know what I mean? 50,000 guests came for Yom Tov. Where do you put him? Where do you put him to lay down? Where do you give him, forgive me, to go to the bathroom? I mean, what do you, it's a lot of people. So it was a big operation to give them lodging and to give them food and to give them accommodations. But of course, the Rebbe is only one person. There was a bottleneck. Everybody came to see the Rebbe, so 40,000 people come to the Rebbe for a Yom Tov. So each person gets what? A handshake. How much time could the Rebbe have for each person if he has 40,000, 50,000 guests in a week? Guests. But that's how it was. The Chassidim came to their Rebbe. Now, some of these Chassidim had a lot of money. And some of these Chassidim made a living taking other people's money, understand? Everybody has to make a living. One is a lion, one is a hyena. Everybody has to make a living. So, one is a jackal. So, when the richer Chassidim used to come to Ger, they would go to the Rebbetzin, to the wife of the Rebbe. She had a safe, a big safe, with little compartments, little boxes. And she would take your wealth, that means your cash, your traveler's checks, and if you were carrying jewelry, and she would put it into a little box, and she'd give you a receipt. And after Yom Tov, you would come back and you would give her your receipt and you'd collect your wealth.
The money going to save it?
To keep it safe, yeah. Every Yom Tov was an old Yid, bent over, with a long beard, looked like a schnorrer, a shlamazel. And he came to the Ger Rebbe, and he went into the Rebbetzin with a wallet. The wallet looked older than him, an old, battered, broken wallet. And he would give her this wallet. They put it in the safe. She looked at this man, and she looks at the wallet. He probably has a buck and a quarter. He has travel fare to go home. He didn't have any money. She didn't want to embarrass him. So she took it, and she put it in, but she never opened it. She never bothered counting, because she figured that there's no money in the wallet. And she gave him a receipt, and he came after Yom Tov, he collected she gave the receipt back, and he got his money, his wallet. And one time she lost it. The wallet was displaced. It wasn't in the regular cubicle where she had put it in before Yom Tov. So when he came after Yom Tov to collect his money, she says, I displaced your wallet. I cannot find it. Here's 15 zlotys. She figured 15 zlotys is 5 times what he had in his wallet. So she's giving him more than but she never counted it. She had no record. He takes the 15 zlotys, he looks at the 15 zlotys and thinks of it. Okay, thank you, leaves. And then she finds the wallet, and there's hundreds of zlotys in the wallet. It was a lot of money. So she goes into her husband, and she tells her husband the story. It's a man who comes every Yom Tov with a wallet full of geld. I looked at him as a schnorrer. I never even bothered counting the money. And the wallet disappeared. And I gave him 15 zlotys. He said, thank you, and he left. And later on, there's hundreds of, it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. So the Rebbe says to his Rebbetzin that the next time he comes, bring him to me. So the next Yom Tov comes again, with again an old wallet, full of money. And he comes into the Rebbetzin with his new old wallet, and she's here, he put it in the safe. She says, wait a minute, you were here last Yom Tov. He says, yeah. I lost your wallet. He says, yeah. I gave you 15 zlotys. He says, yeah. You didn't complain. He says, yeah. But I found your wallet. There were hundreds of zlotys, a lot of money in the wallet. Why didn't you complain? So he tells the Rebbetzin as follows. He's spoken Yiddish. A Rebbe darf haben Geld. Every Rebbe needs money. But the Rebbeim are not in business. So the Eibishter give their money to the different Chassidim. So when you come to a Rebbe, you bring money in case the Rebbe needs. There was a chassid, a Lubavitcher chassid, whose name was Rabbi Simpson, who used to say, for this you have to know Yiddish and Hebrew. Rebbe darf man kommen mit 3 Sachen. Bebeitel, bebottel, bebittel. You understand? Beitel means a wallet. Bottle means a bottle, not of water. And bittel, how do you translate bittel? Yeah. Bebeitel, bebottel, bebittel. That was his expression. When you come to the Rebbe, you bring money to the Rebbe. You say l'chayim by a Rebbe, and you come with bittel. Bebeitel, bebottel, bebittel. So he says, when you gave you back the 15 zlotys, I figured that the Rebbe needed the money. And this is the change. That's what the money's for. The money's for the Rebbe. So she told this to her husband, and her husband called him. The Ger Rebbe, I don't know which one it was. It's Fasebes, So he comes into the Ger Rebbe, and the Ger Rebbe says to him, remember this is a Jew who had 40, 50,000 guests at Yom Tov. He didn't have time to say hello to everybody. Now he's calling him into his cheder. He says, my wife told me what happened. And I want to give you an offer. Ask me anything you want, I'll give it to you. Whatever, it was a big tzaddik. If he would ask for millions, he would get it. Whatever he wanted. Ask me anything you want. Any bracha you want, and I give it to you. I guarantee. From a tzaddik who could deliver. I could say words also. Who could deliver. Anything you want. So he says to the Gerrer Rebbe, he says, bald is Pesach. Soon is coming Pesach. Ich will as dem Pesach, so liech meshamer an dem Rebbe. I want that for this Pesach, I should serve the Rebbe. I should bring him the wine, I should bring him the water. I should be his misharis. Instead of whoever job it should be my job. I should serve, for the 8 days of Pesach, I should be the Rebbe's servant. So the Rebbe makes with his hand, you could have asked for millions. And what did you ask? To bring me Negelwasser, you understand? This is the story. But it's a meaningful story. I'll tell you why it's a meaningful story. Because, in Halacha, Rabbi Shochet is a big Talmud Chacham, so he knows. Most people, if I give you a gift, I did you a favor. If you give me a gift, you did me a favor. But some people, the greatest thing you could get is that they take something from you. You understand? Some people, the biggest matana you could get is that you give them a gift and they receive it. And that's the meaning of this story. It was a chassid. What did he need from his Rebbe? What did he need from his Rebbe? That he should serve him. That's all he needed. The greatest thing I could get from my Rebbe is to be Mesharis, to serve him. And this is the deepest reason you come, why we come here. The Rebbe is a very interesting man. He's a Rebbe, he's a holy man. You have to think about it. Yeah, you guys come from Panama, right? So they probably play football in Panama. I don't know how important it is, but yeah. Baseball. Rachmana litzlan. It's an American sport. You're supposed to hate America. No, all the tzaddiks come from the United States. It's an American. With Panamanian players. It's a parnasa. There must be some Jewish blood that I get mishdone.
The agent.
Very good, very good. So they play baseball, right? So you have hero worship. You have an athlete who's very, very good, and everyone's very excited about him, and they follow him. Why? Because he's a great ball player. You have hero worship of all different types. Some people are worship because they're great musicians. Some people are worship because they're great entertainers. Some people worship because they're politicians, right? What is the hero worship of a Rebbe? Why would young children love him? Young children, little ones, love him. Why would Yidden, who are themselves come from, they're not very religious themselves, but they would love this Rebbe so much, and they would give their life for this Rebbe. Why? What does the Rebbe give them? What kind of hero worship? What kind of cards? What kind of baseball cards are they collecting of the Rebbe? What? If you're a big chassid, if you're a learned man, if you're a scholarly person, if you're a religious and a pious Jew, okay, so you have a lot to learn. But if you don't care about those things, why do you love him? Why do you love him? I think that's a very good way to put it, Emes. It's to get a Jew's connection to a tzaddik is like Lag Baimer. You ever think about Lag Baimer? What does a B'Shim B'Yechoy have in common with the people who make fires on Lag Baimer? And nothing, except that they make a fire. B'Shim B'Yechoy was the holiest man who ever lived, right? He was involved in the highest levels of understanding the Eibishter's truth. And people who are not even from Lag Baimer, you make a bomb on fire. Why? Because the connection between us and a tzaddik, it's very difficult to explain. The hero worship of a Rebbe is because it's emes. You're not going to get his autograph, although he'll give you $1, and he'll forget, he'll give you his autograph, an original autograph. You'll write him a letter that you had a bar mitzvah, he'll send you a letter. It's because it's emes, because it's godliness. And a Jew has a feel for it, a kin for it. And in this culture, in the Chabad culture, this Rebbe collected dues. He gave dollars, he gave brachas. There was a group of Jews, I'm not going to say which, they got angry at the Rebbe. A group of Yidden, a certain Hasidic group, they got angry at the Rebbe. The Rebbe was an outspoken man, he said what he wanted to say, and not everything the Rebbe said was so nice. See, he had something that this particular sect, whoever they were, didn't like it, and they're upset. There was a shul in Borough Park that belonged to that sect, and when the Rebbe said what he said or did what he did that they didn't like, there was a big meeting. They were very upset. You have to punish the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They're going to teach him. So everybody got together, and they made a decision that they're going to get in line, all of them. And when they come up to the Rebbe, they can give him back the dollars. I can't even imagine. The world would have burned to the ground. It would have been fire. The payday would have been terrible. If they had done that, it would have been very bad. Very, very bad. And they're all excited. They're going to get in line, they give him back his dollars. There was an old Yidl in the back of the room. He wasn't a part of the meeting, and he's listening to them talking and talking and talking. So when they're all excited about, can you imagine going to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, giving him back his dollars? Like, I don't want your bracha. So this old man says, no. Don't give him back your dollars. Give him back the children he gave you. Give him back the children he gave you. He became very, very quiet. He became very, very, very quiet. And nobody showed up on Sunday. Nobody showed up on Sunday. You understand? Oh, give them the kinder. You know what would have happened if they had given back the Rebbe the dollars? I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. But the point is, the Rebbe demands of us. And what's a Lubavitcher Chassid? Who gives? Our Chassidus is defined not by what we take, but what we give. The point is, everybody, a Chassid gives. A Lubavitcher Chassid in this generation, Chassidus is defined not by what we take, but what we give. And what's interesting about it is, there is such pleasure in giving. In other words, when I have a son who's his age, same class, who's going on shlichus to Philadelphia, yeah? Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, he's there right now. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Amazing, a nes. His only picture with the Rebbe that he has, he was 6 months old. The Rebbe was after the stroke already. And my wife walked by the Rebbe holding him. And there's a film of it. So he got a hold of the film, and he called out of the film pictures, and this is his whole life. He has no recollection. The joy that he has, the joy that all the children have, when they get a place for shlichus. Shlichus is not an easy life, you know. Shlichus is not an easy life. It's a meaningful life. It's a rich life. But it's not so good to have to be nice to all the nudnikim in the world all the time, you understand? And that's basically what shlichus is. Shliach is someone who gets taken advantage of every day, you understand? So what are we so happy about? You know, when shluchim went on shlichus 50, 60 years ago, the parents used to complain. When the Rebbe sent shluchim, when he first became Rebbe, parents wrote the Rebbe a letter that Rebbe ruined the whole chasana. They found out before the chasana that the Rebbe was going to send them to South America someplace. So they wrote to the Rebbe, Yiddish, the Rebbe ruined the whole party. So the Rebbe wrote them back a letter. I'm sending your children to a city with so many and so many thousands of Jews, with so much opportunity to spread Yiddishkeit and to make a difference. And you call this a bishlochim of the Siderenu, to bishlochim of the Friedrich Rebbe. That's how the Rebbe called it. And you're telling me that I'm ruining your simcha? He says, listen, I'm not forcing anybody. If you want them to go good, otherwise tell me and I'll take somebody else. I take somebody else. And they went on shlichus. I don't know what the parents did, but the kids went on shlichus. Today, you're talking about a generation of children who never saw him. And there's no greater joy. Why? Because it's Chassidus, you understand? Chassidus is a tzaddik, a Rebbe, a Nasi B'Yisrael, who connects us to Atzmos and Moshe and Sabbath. He connects us to Hashem. Our connection to the Eibishter is not based on what He gives us, but it's based on what we give Him. That's the idea. That's what Hiskashrus means. You know, our relationship with the Rebbe is not even based on learning his Torah. It's based on doing the things that he needs for us to do. Do it right, and in our giving, in our being mashpia to others, in our putting ourselves aside for the benefit of a second person, we're connecting ourselves to the Rebbe, and by being connected to the Rebbe, we have a greater connection to the Eibishter, to Atzmus Moshe Baruch Hu. This is the program. This is the program. And if you're in Lubavitcher, sooner or later you're going to fall into one or two or all three of these situations. When you come to the oil, you unload all your tzaddas. Yeah. And one day you have enough seichel, you come to the oil and say, I want a connection to Atzmus Moshe Baruch Hu. You go to the Rebbe to get a connection to the Eibishter. And the highest madrega, you come to them and say, no, so what can I do? So what can I do? Everybody can do. Whether it's official or it's not official, whether you wear a badge or you don't wear a badge, we can all make a difference. And the simple truth of the matter is that when you're connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, what the Medrash says, we're going to Pesach. So when the Yamsuf split, when the sea split, it says in the Chumash, it says in the Siddur, they believed in God and they believed in Moshe Rabbeinu, his servant. So the Mechilta says, Misha Maimin b'Moshe, Maimin b'Hashem. Those Jews who believed in Moshe Rabbeinu, they believed in God. It doesn't say the other, but it's self-understood. Misha Maimin b'Moshe, if you believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. You understand? This is why you're here. And this is the significance and the meaning of coming to the Rebbe. And this is why Yud Aleph Nisan is such an important day for us. We're having a Fabrengen for Yud Aleph Nisan. I was supposed to do it tomorrow, but I'm going to Pasha be away. I'm not going to be in the city. So we made a Muktam, a Yud Aleph Nisan Muktam, a little early. We're celebrating the Rebbe's birthday because in a very, very real way, it has to do with our life. There was a Yid who was at the Rebbe's Chassaneh in 1928. It's a long time ago. The Rebbe got married a long time ago. Over 90 years ago, the Rebbe got married. His name was Rebbe L'chaim Altois. He was a very, very special chassid. He was at the Rebbe's bris. He was by the Rebbe's upshed. He knew the Rebbe from childhood. He was a Nikolayev Yid. The Rebbe's parents got married and lived in Nikolayev for a few years. He made the shidduch. He was at the Rebbe's wedding. So the previous Rebbe had no sons. He had only daughters. So the day of the wedding, he was the Rebbe's shomer. He was the shomer. You know, a chassan and a kala were afraid they're going to run away or they're going to get cold feet. So you see him keeps them busy the whole time. So he was there. He was in the hotel. The Rebbe had a hotel room for the couple of days before the wedding, and then after he got married, he was together with the Rebbetzin. But for that day or two, he was his roommate. He was with the Rebbe. And he described how the Rebbe behaved the day of the wedding. It's in a published letter. The letter is printed. How the Rebbe behaved the day of his chassaneh. He kept on telling the Rebbe to rest. Maybe the Rebbe should lay down for a few minutes. The Rebbe refused. The Rebbe worked the ganzen Tag. He was getting ready for his own chassaneh. You can imagine what it means. The Rebbe is getting married to his own chassaneh. And then he describes the Rebbe daven mincha. The mincha, the day of the chassaneh, is like Yom Kippur. You say vidu, you say al chet. And it's tshuva for a whole life. You understand? The day of the chasna, the Yom Kippur, is a tshuva for kol hachaim kulam. And he was in the room when the Rebbe davened that mincha. You can imagine buckets of tears. You can imagine how it looked. It was in his hotel room. There was no minyan. It was the Rebbe davened alone. And he says, I'm sitting and I'm watching. So at first he muses. He knew the Rebbe as a child. And in the interim, the Rebbe went to college. Yeah. So he's writing to his son who lived in Russia, but it's his own music, his own thoughts. Ha'im, he does the Zelber Mendel. It's the same Mendel that I knew when he was this big. And then he writes, same Mendel, hasn't changed one drop. The Zelber Mendel grew up, and he's educated, and he knows so much, and he understands the world, but he's the same Mendel. And then he continues writing. I'm sitting here, I'm standing here, and I'm watching him daven. He writes very emotionally. And in a few hours, he's going to get married to the Rebbetzin, to the daughter of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he explains how meaningful it is that the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, what the Friedrich Rebbe meant to him. I forgot what words he uses. The only thing that's precious to us, the Rebbe, the only thing that's precious. And he's going to marry the daughter of the only thing that's precious to us, and become his son-in-law. And he writes, I'm thinking to myself, how much of my future, and how much of your future, and how much of the future of my children, and how much of the future of your children is tied up in this young man. This is what he says. He writes in the letter. I'm thinking, I'm watching the Rebbe Gerefes Chassaneh. How much of my future and how much of your future, how much of my future, my children's future. When he wrote that, it was before the Holocaust. You understand? 1928. Huh? What would the world be without the Rebbe? Can't even imagine such a thing. So this is the deal, Rabbi Yisrael. We have a connection to the Rebbe. And I think that these are 3 steps, First you come to the Rebbe because you have problems. Then you come to the Rebbe because you want a relationship with the Eibishter. And then you come to the Rebbe because you want to serve. And each stage is a deeper stage of his kashrus, of being a chassid. Anyway, those are my prepared remarks. I used up the whole hour. Okay, if you want to make any comments or ask any questions, I prepared the whole. Let me tell you, Pesach. I'll tell you, don't turn it off just yet. Yeah, I'll tell you a story about Pesach. I'll tell you a story about Pesach with the Rebbe. In 1947, the Friedrich Rebbe was still alive. The previous Rebbe was still alive. So the Rebbe's mother came from Russia then. The Rebbe's mother came from Russia. Her name was Rebbe Tzimchane. So the Rebbe traveled from New York. He was living in New York to Paris to collect his mother, to pick her up. And he spent 3 months in Paris because his mother was ill and she would never pass the examinations. The government, the doctors would see her, they'd send her back. So they had to literally fatten her up. They had to make her look good, that when she'll come to the border and they'll do the examination, they should let her into the United States of America. So he was in Russia, he was in France from after Purim till after Shavuos. It was a Pesach. So during that visit, the Rebbe met a lot of Yidden. It was right after the Holocaust. You can imagine what those Jews looked like. 1947, everybody was so broken. And there was a Yid in Paris, a big lamda, a big Talmud Chacham, a very learned man, a very scholarly man. He was not a chassid, he was what we would call a misnagid, or Eilamish. He was a big bentay, a big, very learned man. And he met the Rebbe. And they told him that, the Rebbe is a very big Gaon, he's a very big scholar. And they started to engage in discussions, started talking Torah, and he enjoyed it. So he would come often to the shul where the Rebbe davened, and he would schmooze with the Rebbe in learning. And it looked like the Rebbe also enjoyed talking to him. Anyway, he met the Rebbe a few times. They talked. This man was married many years. He survived the Holocaust. He was married from before the war, and he had no children. So one of the Chassidim said to him, this is the son-in-law of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You have no children. You should ask him for a bracha, for children. He says, nah, I'm not into that. The bracha business is not for me. I'm a misnagid. I'm not into bracha business. So they said to him, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Tell them you have no children. So the next time they met was right before Pesach. Because right before Pesach they talked in learning, but what they talked about? They talked about the Seder. And the way the Seder is constructed, the whole Seder revolves around the children. Right? The Sipa, the mitzvah, is for the children. So we're talking about the halachas, the lomdis, the pilpul behind the mitzvah, the mitzvah of telling us. At the end of this conversation, this man finally tells the Rebbe, I don't have any children. So the Rebbe very, very warmly takes his hand in his and he shakes it. And he tells him, Das is for v'igada talavinucha. You understand Yiddish? This is to to fulfill the mitzvah of telling your children the story. The Rebbe went back to America. He moved to Eretz Yisrael. Within a year, his only son was born. They had one son, one bachar. Within a year, their son was born. They lived in a non-Hasidic community, and they didn't like Hasidim so much. And he always used to tell his son that when people speak against the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you cannot speak, you have to be quiet. Because you were born from a bracha from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He told the story that in 1947, the Rebbe was not even Rebbe. And the Rebbe told him, this is for... Anyway, 40 years later, 1989, 1990, many years later, this man was already married with children. He had grandchildren almost. Came to America for the first time. The child, to go to a wedding of relatives in Lakewood, New Jersey. And he made his way to Crown Heights, and he got online for dollars with one of his sons, I think, a son or a grandson. And he walks by the Rebbe. He didn't say a word. He didn't say who he was, and didn't say how old he was, and didn't say when he was born, and so on and so forth. He just walked by. The Rebbe gives him $1, and he passes. The Rebbe calls him back, and then gives him a second $1, and tells him, "Das is farvi, gada talavincha." The same words.
There's another one.
Okay, I kosher felach Pesach
What was
alamim.
the man's name?
The same words that the Rebbe told his father, he told him, "This is for the gada talavincha." Das is farvi, gada talavincha. Okay, nice to meet you all. Hazak, yes.